welcome back to Guitars and Music Tech. In today's episode, we'll talk about guitar modeling. What is it, and what do I like and dislike about it? First, we're going to discuss the guitar amp, because it's an amp model. And then we'll see what does the amp model actually models. First, let's talk about what happens when you play your guitar through an amp. The electric signal comes out of your guitar, goes to your preamp inside the amp. You have two types of amps. We have tube amps, and we have solid state amps, and we have hybrid amps, which is a little bit part of tubes and part of solid state, transistors and such. So we will discuss in another episode what does a tube amp, the tube itself, how does that work, and why is it so magical. But for today, we'll just discuss the modeling aspect of an amp, and what I don't like about it, and what happens in reality when you do play through it, and when you do play through a regular amp, and what's the difference in that. So first, as I said, the signal goes from your guitar to your preamp, and basically most amplifiers have two parts. It's the preamp part, and then there's the power amp part. The preamp is where you shape your tone, and sometimes you add a little bit of distortion, of gain. And the power amp is basically what amplifies that signal after it went through the preamp. And each stage, the preamp and the amp, have its own type of distortion that when you drive it, when you push that, it will give you a certain kind of saturation. After it's going from the power amp, it goes through your speaker. And your speaker also has an effect on your sound. The speakers are very, very important, the most important in my opinion, in terms of the modeling aspect. So the sound comes out of the speakers, so the more you put volume, you will be driving those amp, the power amp and the preamp, and the speakers will start to saturate, and you will get that sound. And as we discussed in previous episode, when it's louder, it sounds better. And also when we discussed 3D, we said, okay, when it's a real amp, you get to have all the reflections on the wall and all that and around you. And then you can really feel and hear the 3D sound that's coming from one single speaker, the mono speaker of your amp or combo amp, whatever amp you have. So this experience is unique. Until today, you're not even able to reproduce it. They're getting very close, but they don't really are not able to reproduce it so far. But does that mean that we just forget about all the modeling things? No. I'm coming to it. You'll see. So it's becoming very complicated. When you plug your guitar to that preamp stage, there's a very important thing that happens. And I've learned this after years. I wish somebody have told me. The interaction between your pickup, your electronics inside the guitar itself, the volume pot and the little condenser inside that cuts a little bit of the high frequencies and all that, the tone control, and the front of your preamp. That stage is very complicated, and it's interactive. That means if you turn down your volume, you're actually changing a lot of parameters and a lot of things that the preamp will react to. And in a model, that is not there. You don't have that part. They try to mimic it by taking the volume that is coming to the model, but they can't really have models of every little volume change or tone change that you have on your guitar. That is too complicated so far. They're getting more powerful with more powerful computers and more programmings. The models are more robust. They can have all kinds of different things. They are getting close, but they really can't do that yet. So this first stage already is a very, very, very important, and you lose so much when you get into a model. Because when you're playing your guitar in a model, you put your volume, turn it down a little bit. You feel, it's a little bit low volume. You turn it up, it's a little bit high volume, it's distortion a little bit. The newer models are allowing you to, it's acting like a real amp. So the louder you put the volume and start to distort more. But that's not it. It's not only that. There's a lot of other things going on, very delicate things that are not done, are not really translated properly. So that's the first stage. And then when you move on to the power amp, also, if it was a solid state, you won't get too much of that interaction going on, which is the volume itself, the vibration of the amp. It's moving. The speaker is moving, and the tubes, they have a kind of a filament, and we will discuss it in another episode, how the inside of the tubes vibrate, and because of this vibration, the sound is changing. So the louder or whatever notes you're playing are affecting what is going on. So it's it's alive. It's an interactive thing, depending on what you're playing, which note, which frequency is vibrating and resonating, and those tubes are moving and interacting at the same time with you and what you're playing. So again, that part, not there. You can't have that interaction in a model. Remember, a model is just a program. Zeros and ones, addition, subtraction, functions. That's all it is. So it reacts every time the same way. But in an amp, not the case. Again, we will discuss the secret and the beautiful and the magic of real analog tubes and why they are so magical in the next episode. Then you go to the speakers, and the speaker, again, it's an interactive live. He's alive. The speaker is alive. Every part of your amp is alive. Imagine that. So the speaker, again, you're playing, it's resonating. You're pushing it, it's going into a different tonality. It's changing a little bit every time you are playing a certain note, a certain frequency, a certain volume. So also, again, this is not there in a model. They are trying to do all of those things, but they take a picture. It's like you take a static picture with your camera of a nice view. Okay, it's new, it's nice. Look at it. It's static. It doesn't move. It doesn't interact with you. It's there. It's beautiful. It sounds beautiful. And all those comparisons that you see on YouTube and you hear on, they are, you may be actually, when you listen to the comparisons of a real amp and the model, and you might, look at that, the model sounds even better than the real amp. Well, maybe because basically they took the picture at its best. So when you have a real view out of the window and you wait for the best beautiful moment and you snap a picture, well, the picture is beautiful. But does it give you the same feeling as standing in front of that window and looking at that view? No, it's not the same thing. The view is alive. Things are moving. Same thing with a real amp. It's alive. Every part of it is alive. And also the speaker, when it emits the sound to you, it interacts with your guitar. It hits your guitar body and it interacts with your strings. And that's why you hear all those kind of beautiful sustained notes when you're playing live or when you see the big stars playing them. And they can keep that note singing forever. They do some electronic sustain feedback loops inside electronics to mimic that, but it's not the same thing. So when you have the real thing, everything becomes actually on a real amp easier to play. So don't get too hard on yourself. You're having your model, your beautiful Helix, and you're playing and it doesn't sound, it doesn't feel, you're not able to play what he's playing, that guy on YouTube or what you hear on the record. Because he's really playing with a real amp. So it makes a big difference in the interactions. And what I find in my own experience, I've been playing with the analog Nope Tubes amp at the beginning. of my musical life because I could not afford it. I could not find them. But then later on, I finally got my hands on a tube amp, and it changed everything. It's not the same thing anymore. And you don't need to have a big rig and everything, It's just a small combo amp, a tube combo amp will do it for you. So my advice to you, if you're playing with models and you have a trouble figuring, like feeling and getting to the sound that you hear on the record, not exactly the sound. I mean, what they're playing. You hear someone playing something and you try to play it. It sounds good. You sound good, but it doesn't feel the same. And that's a big thing here. It doesn't feel. All the things we talked about, it's alive, it interacts with you, and that gives it a certain feeling, which they never discuss when they are comparing a real amp to a model. You just hear the sound, but you don't have the feeling. You can't get how it feels on YouTube. You just hear, you compare, oh, this one is better. And you can make mistakes. Like they tell you the blind test. Okay, listen and tell me which one's the real amp. And I find all this is useless. It's a waste of time. You can't say who's real and who's... It's like getting a picture and a static picture. You cannot compare. It doesn't work. You have to get the guitar, plug it in, and play it. And feel it. And let you interact with it. And then you'll know what is it. Also, there's something I can tell you that not everybody will. It's a sensitivity thing. You need to be hypersensitive to what you're playing so that you can get all the tiny little details that you are trying to find, and that they disappear in a model because they're not there. So in conclusion, an amp model is good. It has its uses if you can't really have a real amp. That's the only reason I would use it. If you can't get your hand on a real amp, use a model. If you can put both together, a hybrid of both, like right now you can have an amp and then you have some power soaks, and then you put it in your sound card and you mix it, and you can go through IRs and modelings of speaker cabinets and all that. That is the best world if you really can turn on your amp loud enough and all that. So in conclusion, there's a lot of things that happen in a real amp that are not yet, and I don't think they would be able to do it unless they have very, very powerful computers, and it's very, very complicated to model reality and have we're getting close. We're getting very close, and people are getting fooled by the sound. It sounds good, it sounds great, but to me it doesn't feel the same. So you need, my advice, get yourself a small little combo amp. There's a lot of them, around $1,000, that will do it, and play with that. You will see, you'll feel better. You will be able to play things that you sometimes were not able to play before because of models. And I find when I used to use models, the sound between guitars were not as obvious. Like you use a Gibson, you use a Fender, you change strings, you change volumes. It doesn't make any difference. They all sound the same almost. With a real amp, it's not the same story. Everything has its own character and everything changes drastically. It's like your palette of sensitivity is a completely changed, and you start to hear things that you've never heard before. And everything you do on your guitar is translated, and fidelity is there. You can hear it. And that makes you a better player, because if you only can hear a few things, then you can't control them. You can't control what you can't hear. And us as guitar players, when you do a bend, you really need to hear that bend. When you do a slide, you need to feel that string. And one other thing I forgot to mention, all those modeling things, they add a little bit of delay, right? Because you need to take the sound, translate it into digital, right? And then process it with the software, which is the model amp model, and then transfer it back to analog and put it out through the speaker. All that takes time. It's very short time, right? But it's still there. And some people will feel it more than others. We're not all made the same. So the ones who feel it, they will hate it. Our brain adapts to it a little bit, but still it's there. And when I switch from my beautiful amp modeling things and I go through the real one, I feel it. It's different. The sound of the real amp may not be as good, but the feel and what I can do and what I can play with a real amp, I can't do that with the model. Although the model, because it's modeled, sometimes with certain types of music, it makes it, you really don't want all those details. Like if you're playing thrash metal, let's say, you really want to push the volume completely up. You're not going to change and put a little bit less volume because you want to have the dynamic. There's no dynamics there. You have a compressor and it's going through it and it's attacking, and that's what you want. Models are good, and they're very popular with thrash metal and heavy metal. But when it comes to you want a little bit more details, like say you're playing Satriani. Well, I heard Satriani, he can never go through a model, and then he has a model on selling a model of his amps and all that. But himself, you never see any of the big stars, the big names, using amp models. You'll never hear that recorded. They tell it's not true. They're really playing with very expensive real amps, recorded in very expensive studio with that's how they do it, and that's how they have they need it. It's not the same. So I noticed that when I'm playing through a model, is always having to put a compressor. That's not the case with the real amp. The real amp itself, the way it saturates, the way it interacts with you, it kind of help you with your sustain, with your guitar sustain, and less noise, more dynamics, and also it gives you a better sound somehow. So thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope I kind of convinced you to get yourself a real tube amp, and we'll discuss why tube is a magical thing in the next episode. Remember, we're taking always the scientific angle of it on top of the musical part of it. Since I'm playing the guitar, I'm playing those amps. I went through a lot of equipment, all kinds of modeling amps, expensive and not so expensive, real amps, tubes, solid state. And the conclusion of my experience is a real tube amp, there is no comparison. Get yourself one, you will love it, and you'll thank me for it. And I was worried before, saying, I don't want tubes because the tubes are going to die and I have to pay more money to fix it and change it. Yeah. But how many times are you going to change tubes? You're really not... don't worry about that. The tubes are not that expensive, and you don't really need to change them that often. So just go for a tube amp. Don't buy a used one. The used one, well, you need to change all the tubes. It's going to cost you almost whatever you've saved on a used one. So buy a brand new tube amp with a brand name, and that's it. You don't even need to have any pedals. Maybe you want fuzz pedal or distortion pedal, overdrive pedal will do it. The rest of the things, chorus, reverb and all that, you can add them digitally. That doesn't make a difference. That's one thing. We're talking about modeling of amps, not modeling of effects. Distortion pedals are kind of like amps. You can't model them properly. They don't work. But other things, reverb, chorus, compressor, maybe compressor, they work well. I mean, you can get good models and you combine them with your real sound, and then it's okay. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.